keynote speaker is selected through a nomination process where colleagues or students can nominate individuals who they think would be good to provide this address. We are looking to highlight the work and the thinking of our colleagues who are also dedicated to pursuing justice through education here at Loyola and beyond. And as Justin noted, the keynote address is focused on justice-oriented and values-based teaching and learning. And we really emphasize these themes that come directly from Paulo Freire and bell hooks of humility, empathy, love, hope, and dialogue. So again, thank you so much for joining us. We're so glad that you could be here. We have our colleague, Mark Torrez, who's here to provide the formal introduction to our keynote address. And we hope that you enjoy our address and conversation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Anthony Torrez. Thank you so much for joining. In the spirit of authenticity, I apologize if there's any background noise. My flight was delayed, and so I'm somewhat public. But I wanted to say I'm incredibly honored and privileged to be here to share remarks with you. One, because of the phenomenal speaker, Dr. Dana K. Harmon is really someone who continues to inspire me, and I've only gotten to know her recently. And so I'm eager to hear what she has to say. And also because of truly the sincere importance that both Paulo Freire and bell hooks have in my own life and my own transformational development, really since the time of high school. So while at Loyola, I serve in multiple roles, both as with the Faculty Center on Education Pedagogy as a part of the advisory board, and also on the health science campus in the Stritch School of Medicine running diversity programs. What brings me here today is my own lived experience. I should say that I've encountered both of these scholars in the classroom, and I've had tremendous opportunities to engage with their seminal texts. But what has been most profound has been the indirect learning and the gifts that I've received from folks who have shepherded me through my own development. So I grew up in Toledo, Ohio. I come from a very poor family with a history of, unfortunately, drug use and alcoholism, a lot of very challenging family issues. And growing up, I wrestled with that a lot in education. I didn't know how to make sense of it. And I was tremendously gifted to have a mentor who happened to be a Black woman who took me in as a high school student and helped me realize that those pieces of my life, the stories of who I was, that is what made me me. Even the darkness, the shame, all of those pieces were so essential to my standpoint, to my understanding it. And so from a very early age, she gifted me with a journal, actually. And she told me that that was my compass, that was my anchor, to learn to honor my own lived experience and to search within myself. And beyond that, she introduced me to this idea that my story was sort of my superpower. And that the more I dug into that, the more I leveraged it, that I could transgress really what these boundaries were that I sort of saw for myself and what society told me. And so from a very young age, I learned to look within myself, and I was given a lot of reading by bell hooks from her. And so Melissa Hall to this day is someone who shepherded me through a very hard piece in my life. And so from there, I have engaged with what bell hooks pondered at one point is, she said, there must exist a paradigm, a practical model for social change that includes an understanding of the ways to transform consciousness that are linked to efforts to transform structures. And so I have lived that in many ways over the years, learning to dig into my story, to reflect on it, to sharpen it. As Paulo Freire talks about, our dialogue, our consciousness. And so I've channeled that in my research, in my teaching practice. And what I have come to realize is that truly there is nothing more powerful in this world than a story. And there is no single more powerful story, more significant or consequential than the one we tell of and to ourselves every day. And so in my research, I have worked with our students to try to help them engage what I've sort of conceptualized as poetics of the afforded self, because I know that my life would be, I may not even be here if it weren't for that affordance of being able to think about my story and to change it, to have a more positive outlook, and in doing that, transform myself. And so in my research, I've seen firsthand how powerful our stories can be if we afford students and our colleagues the opportunity to honor those and to bring them into the classroom. And I know that now more than ever, student-centeredness is so key. But one of the things that I love so much about our speaker today is that she also reminds us that our story is important. As faculty, as staff, we have stories too. And at a time when we are sterilized, we have to continue to be clever in our transgressions in honoring who we are and the things that make us complicated, but also really complex and powerful teachers. And so with that, I'm going to say one last, this is not from Freire or Hooks, but it's the epigraph that opens my dissertation. And it says, in a fractured age, when cynicism is God, here's a possible heresy. We live by stories. We also live in them. One way or another, we are living the stories planted in us early or along the way. Or we are also living the stories we planted, knowingly or unknowingly, in ourselves. We live stories that either give our lives meaning or negate it with meaninglessness. If we change the stories we live by, quite possibly we change our lives. And with that, I would like to turn it over or back to, I believe, Justin and Bridget for our keynote. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark, for those grounding remarks. It was really beautiful. I would like to go ahead with that and jump into our introduction for our keynote speaker today. Dr. Dana K. Harmon is a clinical associate professor at Loyola University, Chicago School of Social Work. Dr. Harmon has a BA in sociology, a BA in sociology from the University of Alabama, an MSW from Loyola University, Chicago, and a PhD in social work from the University of Alabama. She's a member of Phi Beta Kappa Honor Society and a proud graduate scholar of the Southern Regional Education Board that provides support to increase the number of minority scholars who earn the PhD and seek careers as faculty members. She's also a licensed independent clinical social worker in Alabama and has been practicing for over 25 years. As a social work practitioner, she believes each person has the strength and skills to search out and implement solutions for healing and growth, which can transform their life. Dr. Harmon's research includes Black males and families, police brutality against Black males, spirituality and religiosity among Black Americans, and social work education writ large. She is published in peer-reviewed journals and presented at local and national conferences. In 2022, Dr. Harmon was an anti-racist pedagogy faculty scholar at Loyola University, Chicago. In 2020, she was the recipient of the 8th annual Florence W. Vigilant Award for Scholarly Excellence in recognition of the best published co-authored article titled, quote, "The Dehumanization of Black Males by Police, Teaching Social Justice, Black Life Really Does Matter," end quote, in the Journal of Teaching in Social Work. With over 2 decades of teaching at the undergraduate and graduate levels, Dr. Harmon has always been committed to helping create a just society and contribute to the common good of diversity, equity, and justice. As a social work educator, Dr. Harmon views teaching as an opportunity to inspire, empower, and enhance student learning as a transformative experience. She embraces the idea that understanding anti-racism, diversity, and social justice is multi-systemic and multidimensional, as well as beneficial. When teaching across social work curriculum and for program development, she notes that one of the most meaningful aspects of her life is being from Tuskegee, Alabama. I've had the great joy of getting to know Dr. Harmon professionally and Dana personally in the 8.5 months that I have been here at Loyola. We first immediately connected over the fact that we are both from the incredibly historic state of Alabama, she from Tuskegee and I from Birmingham. And as such, we understood a deep level of connected importance of what it means to be of and from the Deep South and doing the work of anti-racist and anti-oppressive education. In the time I have known her, I've witnessed her deep and lasting compassion, her overflowing kindness, her razor-sharp wit, and her unshakable commitment to this work. In my time knowing her, she has not only been a guiding light, but an equal partner as well, walking hand in hand in this work. It is my great honor to introduce to you Dr. Dana K. Harmon as the 2023 keynote speaker for the hooks-Freire Pedagogy of Justice series.
Okay, Justin. Really? Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I was not expecting that. As much as we talked, you should have told me what you were going to say. So I'll get you later. But and I also want to say thank you very much, Mark Anthony, for the introduction. As you mentioned, we have just recently engaged in other spaces, of course, through Zoom. And the first time you spoke, I was like, I just love him. I just like him. He just has a wonderful heart and it's just very genuine. And so when I was informed that you were going to be the introductor, doing the introduction, I was ecstatic and happy and I just feel great. So I want to thank you for that. And we will make it happen where we meet in person at some point before it gets really cold in Chicago, because I don't do really cold in Chicago. So we'll have to do that. But I want to, before I get started, I will say that I'm in a very interesting time and space right now in my life personally and as well professionally. And I'll get into that a little bit more. Right now, I'm in Birmingham at the Baccalaureate Program Directors Conference for Social Work Educators. And I'm very glad to be here. I will say that although, I work and teach at Loyola, I live in Montgomery, Alabama, and I'll explain why. So, and how that came about. So I work remote. So I only had a 90-minute drive today, which was really good. I have to do planes, trains. I just did the automobile. So that was nice. But early this morning, the first thing was a pre-conference, and it was about microaggressions, Black women in the academy. And it was a small group of us, but it was affirming and not surprising, okay? So I'm going to, first I have to acknowledge some people. Justin asked me, did I want this to be a webinar format or Zoom? And I said Zoom, because I like to see people. So I didn't want to feel like I was talking to myself with the webinar format. But I wanted to see people because I specifically, when I found out that I was honored and chosen to do the keynote, I wanted certain people in my life, if they were able to participate. So I sent, put it on Facebook, sent emails to specific people, and those people, I see their names in the room. And I want to acknowledge them because they're very important to me. First and foremost, and I just saw a good friend of mine, a colleague, come in. First and foremost, I need to recognize Dr. Neil Lester. He was my undergraduate professor at the University of Alabama and was the only Black professor I had as an undergraduate. Dr. Lester taught African-American literature. He was tough, but he still is. Sometimes we have conversations and I still feel like I'm a student with Dr. Lester, but he's always been supportive of me for over 30 years. Dr. Lester is also very important to me, not just because he is, is a former professor of mine and the support that he has given, but my mother, and I'll talk about my mother later, was an English professor and specifically focused on African-American literature. So in 1994-95, my mother was going up for tenure. And I said, I need to connect you to Dr. Lester because they had the similarity of English and specifically, like I said, African-American literature. And Dr. Lester, I see he turned his camera on, so I see him. I wish he had kept it off because you're gonna keep me emotional, you're gonna get me crying, but that's okay. He had a hand in my mother getting tenure at Lake Forest College in Lake Forest, Illinois. Sadly, and actually in 1995, my mother was diagnosed with unexpectedly with terminal cancer and was gone in 4 months. And I had just started my master's program at Loyola. So Dr. Lester, you know how I feel about you, and I love you, and I appreciate you. And thank you for continuing to support me. The other person that I have to acknowledge is Dr. Cassandra Simon, Cassie, who I did not have a class with her at UA, but there she is. But she is a mentor. And our journeys are very interesting about what we were told of each other when I was a doctoral student, and she, the only Black professor, female professor at that time. And so then we end up talking and we find out stuff, and you just got to pay attention and just get to know somebody. But Cassie has and is a wonderful, special person. Her family is my family, and they have brought me in as their family. She has gone through a lot lately. I have gone through a lot, but we have been there to support each other. She's real, authentic, strong, has raised her 2 daughters that way, her grandchildren that way. So Cassie, I love you. And we'll see each other soon because we got to catch up. Another person that I need to acknowledge is Mikhail Sabri. This is the practice side of me. So I have always loved practicing, and academia sometimes can take you out of that. And I knew I needed to get back in that again. So I was living here in Montgomery a couple of years or so ago, 3 years ago, and just Googled, and his name came up. And it was just something. I looked at, he has a private practice, and I looked at the website and I was like, there's something about him that I just feel the connection. Like this is where I want to practice. So we met and clicked. When I moved to Chicago for a year, it was hard because I didn't want to leave Sabri Therapeutics, but I'm back and I'm working not for Mikhail because he doesn't like when I say that. We work together. So I'm working with Mikhail, and he is here. So Mikhail, thank you. And you're doing great things. We're going to continue to do great things for the clients that we serve, specifically Black clients in Montgomery and surrounding areas. So thank you for your support. I also would like to thank Dr. Paul Moore. He is the son of a wonderful mentor of mine. I was a Southern Region Education Board scholar. I had funding when I was a doctoral student. And Paul Moore, Dr. Moore, the son of Dr. Moore, Dr. Moore was a very nice man. And he passed away in 2020, I'm trying to do the math here, 2022, 21, pandemic throws me off, 2021. And I was shocked, I was saddened, but the one thing Dr. Moore always told me was keep on keeping on. I went to the SREB Institute to honor him. I'm sure it was 2022, yeah, when he passed. And I was humbled to do that. And so myself and another SREB scholar, we put together a newsletter because Dr. Moore loved his newsletter. He loved his SREB scholars. It was fellowship for people of color who were pursuing PhDs. And once you're a part of the SREB family, you're always a part of the SREB family. So we did this newsletter, and I reached out to Dr. Moore's son, his namesake, Paul Moore, and shared with him the newsletter. He and I have spoken by phone, and we have connected. So I feel like I have also another addition in my life and in my family. So Paul, thank you for being here. And I also want to acknowledge and say thank you to my friend, Dr. Harmon Perry. He is a graduate of the PhD program at the University of Alabama, professor of social work at University of Louisville. We are great friends. We talk about basketball, football, we're the sports side, right? We roll tide, he calls me Doc, as you can see. Thanks, Doc. So Harmon, thank you for being here. And then I need to acknowledge a dear colleague of mine who is a friend, but we became friends. We were friends before she came to Loyola as faculty in the School of Social Work, and that's Deanna Franco. And Deanna and I connected because it was when George Floyd was murdered. And I just listened to her and go, she's about social justice. She's about social work education. And then we're now colleagues. So Deanna, I love you as well. We call, we text anytime, any place to support each other. Because as women of color, we have to in these white spaces that can be cruel and ugly to us and not see us, even though we have every right to be seen. So Deanna, thank you. And Deanna and I have never met in public, but we're gonna, in person, but we're going to make that happen as well. And there's others here, in the room that I also, or in this Zoom that I also want to thank. And finally, I do want to thank FCIP, so Bridget and Jessica and Justin. Thank you all very much for this opportunity. I have been connected and doing things with FCIP as the first part of the first cohort for the anti-racist pedagogy certificate program. That's how I got connected with Bridget. And so since then, I've been all about FCIP, and I just love and appreciate what FCIP is doing at Loyola because it's real. The work that they're doing is honest. The work that they're doing is not performative, because I don't do performative. The older I get, I need authenticity. And so whenever FCIP has anything going on, I look at my calendar, even though I have lunch hour blocked off. If anything's going with FCIP, I'm there, FCIP. So I want to thank you all for having this series and including bell hooks as part of the series, but having me be able to do this for the university. So with that, who am I? So Justin, shared a little bit of who I am and so forth. Those that know me well know that I'm very authentic. I am who I am. What you see is what you get. I'm not fake. I don't do fakeness. Sometimes, I go through this conflict of when should I say something? Because as a Black woman, there are risks to saying things, okay? Because then you get labeled, you're angry. She has an attitude. She doesn't want to work, cohesively with people, all this kind of stuff. And Cassie has told me over the years, because I sit and watch Cassie, go, ooh. But then, I'll say stuff and Cassie's like, Dana, calm down a little bit. So we got to help each other, out. But I just realized that if people in these white spaces of higher ed, and I'm talking about white colleagues and even times white students, can be who they are and say what they want to say without a lot of consequence, then why should I be stifled from that? There should be absolutely no reason why I have to go into space and do kind of this mind check. Is it about my race? Is it about my gender? Should I stay silent? Should I not stay silent? That is a lot. I wake up every day as a Black person who happens to be a woman. And when I wake up, I look in the mirror, I feel good, but then, not all days, but, feel pretty good. And then I step outside the door And I don't know what the world is going to, how they're going to see me and what I'm going to face. So Justin mentioned I'm from Tuskegee. I am proud to be from Tuskegee. I was born in Boston, though, in 1972. But, was there for like 3 months because my parents, met there and things like that. My mother is born and raised from Chicago. So there is that Chicago connection through her. But 3 months old, my parents moved to Tuskegee. And I'm glad that's where I landed, and my 2 sisters and my brother. Why is that? Because I was affirmed every day, not only in my home, with every teacher that I had, with every, my band director in high school, God rest his soul, Mr. Brasfield. I just was uplifted. That is the birthplace of Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks sat in the front of a bus for a reason, not because she was tired, like her feet were, she was tired of the system. And so I have to honor her and where I come from. I can't afford to act like I'm not from where my roots are. My roots are Tuskegee. I never had a teacher say to me, "You don't belong." But once I turned 17 years old and went to the University of Alabama as an undergraduate student, I was told, "You don't belong." I was told by a white professor as I sat in the front of the classroom, as I did from preschool all the way through high school, say, "Wouldn't you feel more comfortable sitting in the back of the classroom?" Because there were 2 other Black students who happened to be in the back. I had to pause and think, do I say something? Do I not say something? And I said, would that make you feel more comfortable? And I just looked. Because my mother always taught me, and particularly my 2 sisters. I'm also an auntie of 5 strong, Black, beautiful girls. I have 5 nieces. So I have to role model for them. My mother always said to us girls, you can do whatever you want, and you make sure that you put number 1 first. My mother put herself first over her husband, over her children. And I didn't understand it as a kid. But as I got older and watched her and paid attention to her, I understood what that meant. That meant you got to take care of you in order to be able to take care of other people. And there's nothing wrong with being number 1. And interestingly, I'm the oldest. So my dad always affectionately called me his number 1 baby. And I've lost my father too. So I've had to navigate before I was 40 years old, going through this tough world as an adult without my parents. And even now, at almost 51, there are many a times, because I'm dealing with a whole lot of crap in higher ed, a lot, to the point where I'm wondering if I want to stay in it. I'm like, you got to figure out, is it worth losing my self-care, my integrity, my dignity and worth as a person? It is not. So I have to realize and ask myself, what is it that I want to do? As I was growing up watching my mother, she was tough, lovingly tough, but she was tough. And I paid attention somewhat to how she interacted with her students. And I always heard from her students, "Ooh, your mama is tough. I like her, but she is tough." I'm like, heck, we had to write book reports over the summer, right, and read while everybody else was having fun. So I'm used to it. But I realized a couple of times when I used to go and watch my mother teach at Tuskegee, how real she was with her students. What her students saw was real. It was genuine. It wasn't any, fakeness with my mother. The older I get, people say to me, ooh, who knew my mom, Dana, you're just like your mother. Dana, your mannerisms are just like your mother. And I'll show a picture of her in a minute because they're going, ooh, you look just like your mother. It's bittersweet because she's not physically here with me, and I see all of her in me. But I also know I have to honor her because she would be disappointed in me as well as my father if I was not. My dad, having 3 girls, and I'm not excluding my brother, but having 3 girls, I understood the importance of having a daddy, and that it's important for a Black man to also be there for his children, because Black men get a bad rap. They do. Like, they're absent fathers. They're just not there. They're this, that, and the other. And that's one of the reasons why my research focuses on Black men. But I think about my daddy and remembering how as a little girl, I would just run to him when he came home from work. How at 7 years old, I would sit next to him and watch football. That's why I love football to this day. How when Tiger Woods played golf, he said to all of us, you all are going to sit here and watch this Black man, this Black kid play golf, because there's none out. I mean, there was a couple, but so I miss my daddy. It would be next month. It will be 13 years since I have not had him. But I have my uncles, and my uncle looks just like my daddy. He's the baby of the family, even though he's 75 years old. And every time I see my uncle, I'm like, oh, you look like daddy. But he can tell that I'm worn out. He has seen me in these last few months go, niece, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, uncle, I'm good. Because we've had a lot of loss in our family. We've lost our matriarch, his mother, my grandmother. We've lost his sister. We've lost so many people in our family. We had another recent significant loss of a family friend. And I'll go, yeah, uncle, I'm good. He's like, are you sure, niece? I'm like, yeah, because I know he's dealing with a lot. Then finally, I've been opening up more. I'm like, no, I'm not good. He's like, what is it? It's like, I'm just trying to find my way. And then when I go into the classroom, which is Zoom, I'm tired. And even my students have seen, because we were all together last semester and this semester, like, Dr. Harmon, are you okay? You look tired. You look different. And as a social worker, I try to be as transparent and model. I'm like, no, I'm not doing well today. But unfortunately, we still have to show up as social workers. We still have to be there. But as a Black woman, I look around, I'm like, who is there for me? Who in my spaces get what I'm dealing with? And honestly, it's not really happening a lot, in social work education where I am. I feel alone a lot of the time. I feel like when I say something, I'm chastised by it. Well, why does she have to say that? Why does she have to be so strong in saying that? Why did she have to say it that way? Because that's how I feel. And I remember having a conversation with Dr. Lester some time ago, and I'm like, I'm just tired. I'm pissed off. And he goes, it's okay, because you are a person, you can feel. I need that validation from somebody that gets it, somebody that knows me, because I don't do well with performative. When I hear people say, yes, I care about all people, but then you do and say something opposite, it makes me wonder, do you really? Do you really? So I've grappled this notion of the experiences that I've had with Black educators from Tuskegee who affirmed me, with Dr. Lester, the only Black professor I had in Alabama, who affirmed me and still does, with Dr. Simon and so many other people. But then I've had white educators who have not. There's some that have. I will say Dr. Marcia Spira, who was a professor at Loyola, suddenly, unexpectedly passed away last year. So that is another huge loss. And I think she's being honored and celebrated today by the school. I miss her, but I love her. because she taught me a lot when I took her groups class. So there are some white educators, but there's far and few between for me to name. When I think about being in social work education for almost 18 years in terms of the academy, I sit and think about all my experiences in these predominantly white schools, including Loyola, that I loved because I am an alum. But I don't feel a lot of the times that I am supposed to be there. Like, why am I here? To fill a quota? To say, look at the diversity that we have, you know, at Loyola and these predominantly white institutions. I don't want to be a quota anymore. I don't want to be a number anymore, because first and foremost, I'm a human being. In social work, we have core values, code of ethics. And I always crack up when I hear people talk about the code of ethics, right? One is integrity. Okay. One is dignity and worth of the person. Another is service. Another is importance of human relationships. Another is competence. And I think about all of that and I don't see it. And I am trying so hard to speak up and out about that. I see one of my former students is trying to sign in. And I'm like, what are we doing? But then I have to stop the we. And I have to go, Dana, what are you going to do? Because the only thing that I can control is my space. Other people are going to do whatever they want to do. When I was in the pre-conference this morning and hearing stories, it just saddens me that we as Black women in academia, and I'm at a social work conference, are dealing with things that we should not be dealing with, especially in a profession that is supposed to be inclusive, a profession that is supposed to be about diversity and equity and inclusion. And now we're challenged as a profession to focus on anti-racism. How do we navigate that? And myself as Black women, when we look around and that's not really happening. I used to think that I was supposed to be a survivor. And I stopped saying that because why do I have to survive? Why can't I just live? Why we've heard people unfortunately say when they're being killed by police, I can't breathe. Sometimes I feel like I can't breathe. I want to wake up and be able to breathe, but it's very, very difficult and complicated. So when I think about bell hooks, like I say, my mother, we had a mini library in our house because, you know, African-American literature, American literature, and we were expected to read it all. And some of that was, you know, was bell hooks. I don't really identify as a feminist. And I think maybe that's because I've never seen feminism or women's movement as embracing Black women. You know, people talk about, oh, yes, the women's movement. I was like, in the 60s, that wasn't really embracing Black women, you know, so I just don't, I just don't know, what that means for me. But I understood and understand what bell hooks meant, and God rest her soul as well, about just the Black women. And I woke up this morning. It's going to go in one direction with this address, but because of a major situation that happened in the last 24 hours that I'm trying to process, I'm very angry about, I'm very frustrated about, I don't know. I said, and then all this grief and loss and many different things that I'm experiencing, I said, I'm going to focus on how bell hooks talked about love. And she had a book all about love and what love is and how love is connected to a sense of community, how love is connected to empathy, right? And how you have to, and love is also a part of healing, because I'm in a space right now where I need to heal. I need to heal the pain that I'm dealing with personally. I need to heal the pain that I'm dealing with professionally. And so I've, been reading some stuff. I was up till 1 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, let me go back and read again, the stuff that bell hooks talked about in terms of love, because I need to affirm myself. I need to find this, this sense of comfort. And one of the things that she talked about is, this whole notion of trauma and how sometimes it can be difficult to recover from trauma. This notion of self-recovery. And when you're surrounded by what you think is trauma or traumatic experiences, you pause and you go, can I recover? And I go, well, I see clients, right, who are going through things. And that's the interesting part, to help them recover. And then I'll go, okay, I finished that session, but then who is there for me? Who is there giving me love? Who is there helping me with my healing? Who is my community? And that is one of the reasons why I moved back from Chicago back home to to Alabama, because I didn't feel love. And in Illinois, Chicago brings pain because I always think about my mom. So, it's very conflictual. But I didn't feel love. I had love from afar, from everybody from Alabama, from people, Dr. Lester is in Arizona, from Paul Moore, who is, in Arizona as well, from my friend and colleague, Deanna, who's in New Mexico. I have love. My dad's family's in New Jersey, but I didn't feel, and I have a couple, my sister lives in Chicago, but she has her own family. But in terms of me, I just didn't feel love. I didn't feel like I was healing. I needed healing. I didn't feel like I was, there was a community. So I had to come back. I had to come back to where all of that is. And in spite of it all, I feel like I'm in the process of healing, and that I have love, because we're not robotic. So when Bell Hooks talks about that love makes people vulnerable, I'm going to love myself. I'm going to go through self-recovery, whatever that looks like, because I cannot continue to feel pain in this way. I cannot continue to experience trauma. There are things that I can control, and I'm going to control it. And so I speak not for myself, but for so many other Black women that are dealing with that. My sisters aren't even in mental health. They're in the business world, and they deal with the same thing. And we sit and we go, why is that? Why is that? And we're all successful. We're all successful, but still we are Black women in these spaces. And I look at my nieces and I go, I don't want them to experience that. But I have to understand there are Black girls. So that's why we have to affirm them. That's why we have to love them. Tell them their hair is beautiful. Tell them God created your physical being in the way that God wanted you to be. My youngest niece is 7. The oldest is 19 and a sophomore at Howard. The youngest is 7. I listen to Brianna, and she shows me all these dolls, because we play family and stuff. I can't keep up with their names and their birth dates, and she has Black dolls. And she added a son. She goes, Auntie, I finally have a son. So she shows me this doll of this beautiful Black boy, baby boy. I'm like, yes, he's beautiful. But when I listen to her innocence, but how happy and proud she is to representative of her Black babies, right, which are her baby dolls. And she has Black books. And she says things like, which we have taught her as a family, proud, pretty, and smart. Proud, pretty, and smart. And she says it with love, and she knows it. I'm like, yes, you are, Brianna, because it is up to my sister, her father, her aunties to give her that first, because I know there are many people in the world that are not going to love her in that way. They're not going to see her in that same way. But she always has a community, which is her family and other friends within our circles for her to go back to. My mom, she is always with me. And I always think, man, I wish I could pick up the phone, be on a Zoom, FaceTime or whatever, and say, Mama, how did you go to a HBCU, Tuskegee, when we moved to Chicago in 1988, go to Lake Forest College, small liberal arts college, and have the fortitude to think that you could start an African-American literature studies, program like at Lake Forest, right? And if those are familiar with Lake Forest, very rich, community area. You know what? She did it. She did it. Years later, well, she has an endowed scholarship in her name at Lake Forest. We worked very hard to do that. When we had the first event, my younger sister also went to Lake Forest. She was sadly a freshman when my mother passed away. So she had to spend her time at Lake Forest without her mother on the campus where she graduated from. But when we had the event, people came up to us and said, I never knew your mother, but I've heard so much about her and I wish I had her. And she just seems like she was just a wonderful, important person. Her former students, Dr. Harmon was very tough. She was strong, but I liked her. And I learned from that you can be tough as a academic, as a college professor, but still, be appreciated by those who might not initially appreciate you. When I started teaching, I've had former students, I don't like her. She's mean. She's this, that, and the other. And you know what? I keep in contact with a lot of them. I was just with a family of a former student on Saturday. My former students in the Zoom, and they go, and I have a white former student who sends me pictures of himself sitting at his desk, while he's at work. He just did that on Friday, and Googled me and sent me a beautiful email. So that's what keeps me going. Because I see, where students started and then where they are now. They have their own families. They're just doing beautiful things, but they say, thank you, Dr. Harmon. And I'm going, well, I appreciate that, but you did the work. But that's why I keep doing it. But at the same time, I have to persevere for me. And I have to find my way for me. Academia is not all bad, and it's not, but it's also not for everyone. In the Zoom background, Bell Hooks has, sometimes people try to destroy you precisely because they recognize your power, not because they don't see it, but because they see it and they don't want it to exist. I think I have power. I've worked hard to get through. I worked really, really hard. Who do I owe stuff to? Me. Who do I owe stuff to? My nieces, my family, my really, really close friends, some colleagues, not all. And I'm okay with that. And I'm actually okay with people not liking me, because I'm not here on this earth, whatever time I have left, to be liked by everyone. I'm not here on this earth, whatever time I have left, to fit in to the mold or the status quo. Some people get very uncomfortable when you say white supremacy systems. A lot of higher ed is white, our society a lot is white supremacy standards and systems. People get uncomfortable when you say that because they think you're talking and calling them a white supremacist. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you have to understand the system of which we all exist in. And I also have to say, as a Black woman in higher ed, and as I go into these different spaces, it is not my job to continue to educate white people. That's exhausting. I have to get up every day and just be Black, which I'm proud to be, but it can be tiresome. So when I hear and see white colleagues say silent and quiet, especially, and not empower other people, or do it performatively, especially in social work, I have a very, very hard time with that because I see the injustice in that. I see the lack of, I see the privilege in that, because you can do that. You can opt out. You can decide when you want to speak, when you don't want to speak. So when I go into the classroom, I'm real. Students know, they can see, but people can assume. I go, I am a Black person. I am a woman. I am heterosexual. These are my experience. I'm from Tuskegee. I'm from Alabama, proud of it. And I put that out there because people need to know, students need to know who I am. And I want to know who they are, because the beauty of being in the classroom, and I always say our class, not my class, my students, that sounds like ownership. Our class is they can learn from me and I can learn from them, and we can learn how to love each other. We can learn how to help each other through healing, because students come with things too in the classroom as well. And we have a sense of community. And, these language of brave and safe space, I don't know what that means much anymore, because is every space brave for someone? Is every space safe for someone? When I drive home 30 minutes and say I need to get in the car because I need a break, and I drive down the road and I go to Tuskegee just so I can feel safe, that's my safe space. When I can go and talk to someone who was my babysitter and tell me stories, that's my safe space. Even if I go to a funeral, which I've had to do, unfortunately, going home to Tuskegee lately, I look around, I'm like, we're all here sad, but I'm with my people. I don't have to shift. I can speak however I want to speak. I can cry however I want to cry. I can laugh however I want to laugh. I can smile however I want to smile, because I see people that look like me, that get me, and I feel safe. So I appreciate love that Bell Hooks talks about. I appreciate the healing that she talked about. I appreciate the sense of community that she talked about, and the importance that Black women, we are super women, but we don't have powers, right? But we are human beings. But Black women historically, and still are, have been doing some things. We have endured a lot in this country. And so when I think about my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, who died 10 days before her 98th birthday, and she always used to say to me, she'll call, how are you doing, Dana? Oh, we called her Gami because she was young when she became a grandmother the first time. She's like, I'm too old for a grandmother. So she mixed grandmother and mommy. She's like, oh, how are you doing? How you doing, Dana? Oh, I'm good, Gami. So what are you doing? Oh, work, school. That was my life, work, school. So then she'll call, how are you doing? Like, oh, school. She'd get that sigh, kind of that New Jersey kind of sigh. I'm like, One day she said to me, she's like, you need to stop telling me about only work and school. You need to live life. You need to travel. Your grandfather and I, we raised 5 kids, we worked, but we traveled, we did things. So I honor her. I honor my mom. I honor my dad. I honor the Black women in this Zoom, like say Cassie and Marquita, my colleague. I honor all Black men because they need to be honored and recognized too. Because without a Black man, I would not be here. And other Black men, I would not be here. And I honor myself. It's okay to be selfish, to love, heal, and find a sense of community for yourself in spite of. So I, had to say to myself, what's next for me? I don't know. I have some thoughts. I have some ideas. Not really sure. I still need to be advised and, think things through. But my mother always said, have a backup plan, right? So I'm in a space of healing right now. It's long overdue because I want to get myself back. I want my uncle to see me on a Zoom and see the niece that he's so used to seeing, and not the niece that's on Zoom that's like this. That's not who I am. When I go into the classroom, I want my students this last month to have all of me, right? When we are together in the summer, to have all of me, because I deserve that for myself and I deserve that for them. Before I go, I want to just share a picture of my mom so you can see who this woman is and was. And, you know, maybe even to see just our similarities, I guess. So that's my mom. This was the last professional picture she took, actually, a year before she passed. So I love it. She's smiling. This is how, I don't always say I saw my mother always smiling, because, you know, as children, you'd always see your parents smiling, but I love this picture of her. And like I say, when I wake up and look in the mirror, I'm like, damn, I look just like my mama. So, Mama, I love you. Hope I'm living life and will continue to live life in the way that I know you want me to moving forward. So thank you, everyone, for your time, and again, for everyone being here, and especially those that are very important to me in my life. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dana. Truly, thank you so much. One of the first things that I just want to say is I thank you, and I've told you this before, but I thank you so much for your bare bones honesty and transparency. You have this way of just like showing up in your truth that is truly inspiring for everyone that can bear witness to that. And it pushes us to kind of be in that number two. And I just want to say to you, I'm very glad to count you among the number of people that I consider in my community as well. And I see so much in the chat as well. I know you're not a person who really likes to be told how great you are, and to feel all that constantly, but I really do hope that you feel the love and the care coming from the folks in the chat and coming from us too. There's this I heard this thing once and it's kind of stuck with me, but it's somebody said that I'm going to give you your flowers, but it's your choice to water them, right? So I do hope that you do water them, right? I think that that's incredibly important, especially with what you're talking about concerning what you've been talking about in healing, in love, in this care for the self that isn't just self-care, but it's a compassion for yourself and a grace for yourself too, and how important that is, especially when you are in spaces like these kind of institutions that that many of us are part of, and when you're trying to live and exist in an authentic and true way. So really, really thank you again for that. I want to go ahead and just kind of transition us into our conversation and discussion. So how this is going to work is that, especially because I know that Dana really likes the free-flowing style of conversation as well. So you can put some questions in the chat, or you can use the feature to raise your hand. And then we can call on you and kind of get it started in that way. So be thinking of some questions or some kind of spaces you want to ask, things you want to ask Dana about, that you want to kind of pick her brain in, that thinking about some things that she has talked about and discussed. I want to just kind of get us started with this kind of question. And this is something that you and I have talked about before, Dana, but I think it's important for you to even say a bit more about it in this particular crowd. But I want to think about, can you, how you would define, or if you can talk about the importance of attending to and recognizing a pedagogy that's writ large, right? Like this is the pedagogy of justice that we're talking about. And it seems like for you, that pedagogy of justice really includes a healing, really includes a sense of compassion, a sense of love. So I want to, just kind of pick your brain about that. What do you think about the importance of attending to and recognizing this pedagogy writ large as something that is not just inside of the classroom, like a lot of people think? So, yeah.
So, yeah, Justin, you and I have talked about, and I've mentioned this to Bridget as well, is, how we define or look at pedagogy. And sometimes I think in higher ed, or just when you hear pedagogy, think it's always in the classroom. Teaching is beyond the classroom. So when I think about, colleges and universities, and let me say this too, because there are staff, some of my colleagues from Loyola who are staff, as well as some others, but staff get not talked about sometimes when you're seen, I think, in some ways, when you're talking about pedagogy, especially in higher education. It's like faculty do all of that, but then you have staff over here. And I've never liked that, even as a doctoral student, because my whole thing is staff. Without staff, how colleges and universities gonna really work and thrive? Okay, so we got to honor staff. But pedagogy is anyone that has interaction with anyone, because everyone can learn something or be taught something. But, like I say, I talked about my paternal grandmother. She's like, I'm 97 years old and I don't know everything, right? I can always learn from something or from someone. When I think about, so pedagogy is whatever space, like I say, me being on FaceTime with my 7-year-old niece, she teaches me sometimes. When I'm trying to figure out my phone or the iPad, she sighs, kind of rolls her eyes respectfully, because she knows how I am about that. Really, auntie, so she's, what you need to do is do this. That's pedagogy. She's trying to keep me up in the game with technology, but connecting that with social justice, which is so important to me, is how do you do this sense of pedagogy and justice for people, equity, and equality and inclusiveness? There has to be joy in that. You want to try to bring joy to someone, because when people are dealing with injustices, sometimes they don't really see the joy, right? They can't find it. It's like, I don't hear it. I don't see it anymore. So Justin and I have been talking lately about Black joy. It came up today in the pre-conference I was in, Black girl joy. I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. We were all affirming each other about Black girl joy. Because whenever I am teaching someone, or someone is teaching me, like I say, I talk about Dr. Simon Cassie all the time. Cassie she's real. I like that. I was a little nervous about it, well, years ago. It's like, I was nervous getting to know her, but she brings me joy because she's a Black woman who's been in this longer than me. So I teach and, I learn from her. There are many mentors out there that tell you stuff that sometimes you don't want to hear, that tell you stuff that might be so real, you go, But if you really want to pay attention and actively listen and, do some self-reflection, which I always try to do, you sit back and you go, yeah, okay, I get what Cassie's saying. Yeah, I get what Dr. Lester is saying. Yeah, I get what my mama said to me in the 23 years I had her, right? So I've always been a social justice person since I was a little girl. My mother used to say, oh, my bleeding heart liberal child. Oh, my, and I used to laugh. I didn't know what that meant. I just knew I loved everyone, right? Now, you get older, and then my parents also said, you just wait till you get outside of Tuskegee, because the world is not Tuskegee, Alabama. And I realized that when I moved to Schaumburg, Illinois, and we were the only Black family in the neighborhood. And then all the white people come out looking at us like, now how do these Black people afford a house in Schaumburg? That's teaching. That's learning. Then I go to the University of Alabama, right? Late 80s, early 90s. What happened? Rodney King beating, O.J. Simpson trial. 2 major events. But then I also walked to campus, if you know the history of UA, where a governor, segregation today, segregation tomorrow, and denied 2 Black students to attend. But I walked that path of James Hood and Vivian Malone, which is that fall starter term is right next to the School of Social Work. I saw Confederate flags in dorm windows. That's teaching. And I realized there's injustice in that, but I can be a part of changing, a change agent in that as well. And I try to do that with my students as best as I can in social work. I hope that answered your question, Justin. And my voice is going, but, not because I'm talking, but the weather here and, stuff like that. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you so much. I really appreciated everything you said, and specifically that portion of having us thinking about dealing with injustice sometimes precludes us from seeing the joy, right? And it makes me think of how when you are in survival mode, right? When you're in triage mode, you can't really experience joy in that particular way, because joy comes through living and learning how to live, right? And you talked about that in your address as well, that the importance of living, of existing and joy in that place. And I think that's something amazing that we think about, what it means to take that into our pedagogy, right? Our pedagogical understanding of our lives and how we learn and how we teach and how we learn from each other. So really, thank you for that. The floor is open for folks who may have some questions. If you want to go ahead and just raise your hand and we'll call on you, or pop some things in the chat and Dana can look and answer it from there. Yeah, Bridget, go ahead.
Thanks. First of all, thank you so much, Dana, for being with us, for sharing yourself with us. I feel like that's sort of what we were privileged to be a part of, is a really generous gift of yourself. And so I appreciate that so much. Thank you. A lot of the things that you said resonated with me. I'm finishing writing my dissertation right now, and it's about well-being. And it's for young kids of color in the foster care system. So different ways of being marginalized, but finding a path to well-being. And what the young people I talked about was their relationships, and that was what it was all about, certain kinds of relationships. But that the relationships are sort of this key to unlocking this movement from the context of their trauma into the opportunity to be well. And so I'm just wondering, as you were talking, I sort of had this thought, because I wonder it too. The trauma is always there. And yet, do we believe that relationships can transform people from severe trauma into well-being? Like, is it actually possible? From your personal experience, from the research that you've done, and maybe what does that look like if it is possible?
So yeah, I mean, I think it's possible. And it has been possible throughout, my life and being in higher ed, as a student, as a student, undergrad, doctoral, MSW student, and faculty. I think it's just the timing of things, sometimes, of what's happening, and even where a person is in their time in their life. I know for me, like I've mentioned, I'm dealing with a lot, and like I say, there's many people that are part of that love and that community, but I can't just rely on them, because they have their lives and, things going on to heal me, So if you had asked this question 3 years ago, even pre-pandemic or even early part of pandemic, my answer probably would have been different, because my life was different. I mean, seeing the pandemic and everything shutting down and, all this sadness and the health and people passing away, that was really, really hard. But George Floyd was kind of what happened. And I still haven't seen that video. I just can't. But that was so horrific for me. And what triggered kind of the racial trauma was so many of my white colleagues, I just started at Loyola, July 2020, saying, I can't believe something like this would happen in our country. Like, and I just kept hearing that over and over again. And I would say to some people, what country have you been living in? You know, I was born in 1972. Okay, so that was right after, you know, Black Power and civil rights. But a lot of us 70 Black babies, we have these African names. My sisters and I all have these like Islamic middle names. My middle name is Khadija. That's why that K is so important to me, you know. My other sister's name is Hadith. My younger sister's middle name is Barika. So that was like that power, you know, 70s babies and, you know, things like that. But I'm like, I was born in 1972, but I've seen the pictures of Emmett Till. Of course, you know, growing up in Alabama, but even if you didn't have to live in Alabama, did you not see the hoses on people just because? Did you not see the bombing of a church of 4 little girls that were killed? So I just got frustrated. And then, you know, people protesting, I got it, but you know what? You don't have to think about it anymore, really, like I do. Because Black men still have been killed. Breonna Taylor was killed, right? So there's racial trauma in that. But then you have to still show up for work. Yeah. And people just kind of move on. I'm like, I don't want to show up for work. Right. So how do you build relationships when and then you're in a pandemic, you're in Zoom. So that makes it even more complicated, right? You know, because you're not in person. But how do you build relationships when you sometimes feel like people don't hear you and see you because they have the privilege to not? So that's why finding your own community and where it might not be with coworkers all the time, you know? So yeah, I think, you know, and Bridget, kids are insightful. We can learn a lot from children and relationship. There's this commercial where you see the 2 little boys, one Black boy, one white boy, and they run into each other down the street and they hug each other. Like, oh, look at the innocence in that. All right, look at and they're best friends. Like, look at the relationship in that. But then we get older and people get in our heads and, you know, kind of disrupt relationships. So I'm concerned about pedagogy because you see what's happening in certain states that I think can fracture these relationships with children and even adults. It hasn't gotten here in Alabama yet. I'm ready for it. So yeah, I struggle with, as you know, because you're a social worker, that value of importance of human relationships. And then based on who makes that standard, you know, who decides what the importance looks like or what that is supposed to be. So yeah, I see Peter has his hand raised, and I've seen Peter in other spaces too. So
we have. This was really delightful. Thank you for your self-revelations, I guess, to us. What an honor to eavesdrop on a kind of in a sacred story that is your journey and your home and your life. It's been really eye-opening to learn more about you as a person, and I just appreciate that. Something that really resonated with me that I wanted to connect with in a couple different ways is the importance of community, which you just said something more about, as the location where love takes place and where love is found. Because oftentimes, especially in our more individualistic way of looking at things, love is between persons. It's me and you. But when you think about a community that's suffused with love, that adds a completely different dimension. And as I'm thinking about our predominantly white institution and our struggle to form as a community that sees racism for what it is and seeks to be anti-racist, I wonder if you have examples from your own experience or maybe stories that you've heard or places that you've interacted with around how communities transform. I've learned so much recently about the specific roles of systems, policies, procedures, practices that can nurture or undercut attempts to be loving in community. And I wonder if you've seen examples of the ways that leaders can be formed, or the particular skills that really high quality leaders have that enable or can be a part of catalyzing the transformation of not just necessarily persons, but of communities into communities of love and inclusiveness. I guess that's the best I could do it.
Wow. Yeah, Peter, I'm trying to think. Because I guess I'm thinking about how community is defined, right? Because community can be a family, community can be friendship groups, community can be workplace, neighborhood. So let me see. I'm trying to think of something where you say transfer.
Well, and you know what? You're illustrating to me a really important point, that we are all members of lots of communities at once.
Yeah.
And those communities serve us as individuals in different ways. I need certain kinds of things and love and whatnot from my family. I need something different from the place where I work, right? But if the place where I work is an institution of higher education, and we're preaching, for lack of a better word, an inclusiveness and an attitude of belonging, and if we're trying to cultivate and inform students, if Jesuit education is intended to be something around a specific kind of transformative experience, that really is the particular community I'm asking about, is the ways that we can contribute to that. But I think an example of the evolution of a community from one of really deep struggle and pain towards one of acceptance and love, I know we could learn from that and apply it and think through it, use our analogical imagination to try to imagine what that might be for us. I'm sorry, so please.
Yeah, so so there's a couple of things that come to mind. One, I'm going to talk, like my practice role or world. And that's why it's so important to me. I didn't go into social work to get a PhD. I didn't. I went into social work to be a clinician and, work with individuals, families, couples, groups, whatever. But, again, my mother, I tell people PhD is part of my DNA, and I'm the school person. My sisters, I guess they're doing very well. They have higher level degrees, things like that. They're like, and I'm done with school. But me, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna continue. But in terms of practice, and I'm gonna put Mikhail on the spot a little bit. Because I think in terms of community, it also, like a leader, right? Who is representative of a really good leader and a genuine leader, and that brings people together. And, as I said about, wanting to go back into practice, and, just Googling, and Mikhail was like one or two, maybe three names I saw, and went on the website. I was like, it just seems like he's a leader that just brings people together. And since I've been working with him, I don't get to know all of the other clinicians because I just, do that part-time. But even when I go to the office, or even when Mikhail and I talk, there's this sense of community. There's this sense of togetherness, and a common cause is to ensure that the community, meaning the individuals, families, and others in community that we serve, have the dignity that they're supposed to have, that they are respected. And so practice is actually a way for me to escape and heal. I enjoy when I have to, see clients, and that's a test. That's a testament to Mikhail, because if I didn't feel a part of that community and who he is as a person, he's just a really good person, a great person, but wonderful leader, who happens to be a Black man who has his own practice. I'm like, you're doing it, Mikhail, you're doing your thing. That is beautiful in terms of a sense of community. And then next, I mentioned the students. Students is a community, because you can see students start at one point and you go, some of you go, you go, keep hope alive, hang in there. And then, then you see them grow And I always tell them when they're about to graduate, Dr. Harmon, did you have to really be that hard? Did you? I was like, there was always a method to my madness. Couldn't tell you what it was. And then they appreciate it. Because now when I get an email out of the blue from a white student who years ago she just told me this in the email, Dr. Harmon, way back in, you made me feel bad as a white person because I had them do an activity where they had to stand up and then they had to move forward, if I said certain things. And she looked back and she realized all the Black students were still behind her and she was pretty much in the front. And she said, I left class feeling like you hated white people, you didn't like me, blah, blah, blah. Well, guess now, this email, she found Google. She found me, and probably 10, 12 years later, she's like, I'm a mother now. And I look at my white son and I realize what you were doing, what you meant, all those years ago. And thank you for it, because it made me be a better person when I've thought about it. And I want my son to also treat people, with respect and all of that. So I'm like, oh, you get those emails out of the blue and I just smile. So the classroom is always a sense of community for me. So practice is great. And when I go into that classroom, sometimes it's the other stuff that I'm not so sure about and wonder, where is the community in this? And it might not be that space, So that's why I said, Peter, about community is so broad and different types of communities and people within it give you different things. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Peter, for that question. And thank you, Dana. And thank you, everyone. I wanted to give you the time because we're right here at our time, Dana, if you wanted to have the last word, to say anything else that you just wanted to kind of share and impart with us. And then I'll go ahead and wrap us up and close us out.
So before I go, I do want to, because I don't think I did, I want to acknowledge, speaking of students, Cameron is one of my former students from another university. Black male, I saw Cameron. Cameron was going the sociology route. I said, nah, he needs to do social work. So I was on him about that. He is a licensed social worker here in the state. His wife also went to the same university. She was in social work. She is a social worker now. And they're expecting their first child, their son. So I'm very happy. I'm waiting for the baby registry. I'm kind of like a little surrogate mama, So I'm ready for the baby registry. I'm ready for when they're going to have their little party, because I will be there and stuff. But Cameron, I love Cameron. Cameron is, like a son to me, and he's works really, really hard, very good person, and not so much because of me, but because of just who he is. And our path just happened to cross. So that's part of my joy, right? So I do want to say that to Cameron. He'll probably gonna text me later, like, Dr. Harmon, or call me like, what did you say that for? But that's okay. Again, I really appreciate this time. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this. I have spoken at, research conferences, different things. So when I got the email, congratulations, I was happy, but I was like, like pressure. And so I thought about it, but like I say, I just kind of woke up and, just kind of in some different spaces and stuff, especially the last 24 hours. But I am so, again, appreciative. Like I say, FCIP brings me joy. FCIP is love. FCIP is healing. FCIP is community for me. All of that. So I'm just proud to be a part of the FCIP community and look forward to continuing working with Justin, Bridget, and Jessica. And then last, I just want to thank everyone. I know some people had to leave and go. I have an opening plenary that I have to go to. And the speaker texts me, I'm here. I'm like, I can't talk to you right now. I'm in a Zoom. But so I'm looking forward to seeing her because she's a mentor of mine, a woman of color. But I want to thank everyone who showed up today. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to do this on a Wednesday evening. And I just hope that you sit and think about what brings you love, what brings you healing, what is your sense of community, and how we can all give back to that, not only to the students that we interact with, but our family, our friends, and other people we encounter. Sometimes you just kind of walk through life and you just happen to meet somebody. So how can you love them? How can you maybe heal them? How can you let them maybe be a part of the community? Here in Alabama, I'll just say this last, we have rival schools. Okay, if you're unfamiliar with the University of, with the football here in Alabama, you have the University of Alabama, and you have what I call the other school in the state, which is Auburn University. And football season is like a big deal. So, you can be pumping gas and somebody sees you have a UA tag or you're an alum, and they'll go, "Roll Tide." Yeah, "Roll Tide. How do you think we're gonna do this season?" I'm like, "Well, we messed up last season, but we got this season." Then you see some Arbor people, especially riding around in Tuscaloosa. I'm like, what are Arbor people doing in Tuscaloosa? You have no business in Tuscaloosa. This is T-Town. So you see them and, kind of scoff, but okay, how you doing? And even though people might be living their lives, guess what? We all come together when it's football season. Nobody really well, some people do see race and gender, and even not put that out. But we all go into Bryant-Denny Stadium, Roll Tide, cheering for the team, got our crimson and white on. I love it because it's community. It's fun. It's exciting. And you high five people you don't even know. I've hugged people I don't even know, right? Like, "Oh, he did that." I'm like, "Why am I hugging this person? I don't know them like that." Well, I don't do it now because of the pandemic, but pre-pandemic, I used to hug people a lot. And so there are spaces, if we open our minds and our hearts to love people, to bring people in our community. I'm concerned about our country. It's so fractured right now. There's so much divisiveness. Does it have to be? No. And my grandmother said she's never seen anything like this since who was elected. She's like, in my whole life, I've never seen the country like this. So I'm like, okay, this is the space that we're in, but that doesn't mean that I have to fall into that. So I hope for you all, love yourself, heal whatever healing, find your sense of community, but extend that to other people. Because once you do that, then they extend to other people. And maybe it will be a better place. The rose-colored glasses that my mother always said that I used to have. So thank you all very much for your time. I appreciate it. And some of y'all, I'm sure I'll see you in some other spaces in Loyola the rest of the semester. So thank you.
Thank you, Dana, and thank you everyone as well. Thank you so much for these lessons of care, compassion, love, grace, and joy for the self, and this connecting to a sense of pedagogy that is truly inclusive and truly just with that. So thank you all. This was our 2023 hooks-Freire Pedagogy of Justice series and our keynote address of that. This has been recorded, the conversation, as well as the keynote and the introductions, and it will all be up on our website early next week. Everyone who registered will also get a copy, a link to this in their email as well. So thank you all so much, and I hope you all have a very great evening and a good rest of your week. Bye.